So, Luke, how are you managing with this lack of MCU movies recently? It's been a real challenge when we've not been getting like 3 every single year.
No, you're right, Michael. It's been very hard, and I'm really gonna miss Black Widow because I was very keen to try and compare Black Widow to Elizabeth Warren, and sadly, that's gonna have to wait a few months. But no, today we're going to be talking about liberals and their fascination with superhero movies and comic book movies in general, and how that informs their politics, or how they use these media properties and compare it to modern politics. And
Yes.
this is something that has fascinated me for quite a while, and I think we've nailed down the reasons. But first, of course, we need evidence, Michael, don't we?
Which I assume you don't have.
No, I don't. I don't have any. No. Yeah, we can't make these wild accusations without some evidence, and I have brought some. The first bit of evidence will be actually the reason why I thought of doing this video today. So the clip is from MSNBC and features Yamiche Alcindor talking about why Biden's cabinet picks felt like the Avengers.
He said he wanted to have a cabinet that looked like America. And there were people there on that stage, of course, talking about all of their different accolades and their experience, but they were also talking about their families who survived the Holocaust, who survived coming from Cuba and fleeing communists, who talked about having gumbo diplomacy, cooking Southern food, as the United Nations ambassador was saying. All of those things are what America's about. It's this melting pot. The other thing I'll just say is I was talking to a Democrat who just said this also felt like the Avengers. It felt like we're being rescued from this craziness that we've all lived through from the last 40 years. And now here are the superheroes to come and save us all.
So there's several things that I like about that clip, Michael. One of them is the interviewer who started it all was Nicole Wallace, who was White House Communications Director for George W. Bush. So that's something quite interesting. Of course, George W. Bush's regime, one of the least evil and most Avengers-like, of course, didn't do anything wrong. Then, Yamiche Alcindor also compares the Holocaust to communism in Cuba. That's another nice take.
Oh, yeah. That is funny.
Yeah, and then there's also the fact that Biden's administration is going to be a melting pot and everything.
Yes, I did like that one about the gumbo.
Yeah. Oh, they're going to be making gumbo in the White House. Just such a change from the last 4 years. But also there was the bit at the end, which we're going to talk about, that it's like the Avengers are back. The fact that Biden is replacing Trump. And obviously, she quoted a Democratic person for that, but I think you could tell that she agreed with it. And without a doubt, I think a lot of people would agree with that as well. That is the first piece of evidence. It's not the central piece of evidence to this because, that's just one clip. We are now going to show you a really amazing clip which played after Joe Biden beat Donald Trump in the presidency about a month ago. So, Michael, are you ready for this?
Yes.
Here we go.
You know what, Luke? We're going to have to stop the podcast. I know we've really just kind of started moving things to the new channel, but we're going to have to end it now because I've been converted. I am a liberal now because that was the most awesome thing I've ever seen. That was the best moment of my life, and I don't think anything that these, Marxists or whatever with their analytics and, their serious discussion about theory is ever going to be able to top Joe Biden as Captain America.
No,
I'm sorry.
I mean, to be honest, I enjoyed some parts of the video. I did. I laughed at others, but I enjoyed some parts. I did like how Biden was just looking confused all the time. Like, he just seemed like these people fly above him, and he's like, what the hell is going on here, man?
That's Biden's actual world he lives in.
Yeah, exactly. Some things I did dislike. Pete Buttigieg as Spider-Man. That is an absolute abomination. My favourite.
Although I guess it does make sense, seeing as Spider-Man is, of course, in being pulled back and forth between Sony and Disney, and Pete Buttigieg is also being pulled back and forth between billion-dollar corporations.
Yeah, I guess so.
But
That's great, really good. No, and then there was the all votes matter thing, which is, I don't even remember seeing that slogan. Like, obviously there's Black Lives Matter, and this is morphed into all votes matter, which is just the most liberal thing ever. We're not even talking about lives anymore, we're talking about votes.
I know, yeah. It's ironic because a lot of the people who vote for Biden aren't alive, am I right? That's for the Trumpers. Did you like how there was the parallel where the Asian people were the Asian politicians
I love
and the black people were the...
Andrew Yang was the Asian character from Doctor Strange.
I know, yeah.
Just, again, oh my god.
Yeah, that's so funny.
I mean, yeah, he's the one Asian politician, is the one Asian character. Wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it would have been funny if, like, John McCain was that character instead. But but that's the thing. John McCain is in this as well. And he is with... who was it? John Lewis, I believe, the congressman who died earlier this year.
Yes.
So glad to see his legacy is still living on as Ant-Man, or Giant Man, as he was in this clip. So then John Lewis places John McCain, somebody who is probably completely different in terms of his politics, and RBG, and also Sean Connery. I think
that was so weird.
That was probably the weirdest one. Sean Connery. What's he doing there? Was Sean Connery part of the resistance? Had I missed that?
Sean Connery probably tweeted something snarky about Trump, which is, let's be honest, basically the most important thing you do. I mean, sure, John Lewis, great activist for civil rights and stuff, but how many snarky things did he tweet on Twitter?
Yeah, exactly.
If anything, it should be Sean Connery carrying John Lewis.
Yeah, and then we have probably the most offensive one, or baffling. It's Elon Musk as Iron Man. Now, Elon Musk is not somebody who I would consider part of the resistance. I don't know if you know much about Elon Musk, Michael.
Yeah, I know that he likes lithium.
He's quite a bad guy. And that's the thing, I don't even know if he was against Trump at all. Like, I really don't understand that. And then we have, of course, Greta Thunberg as Gwyneth Paltrow. What the fuck is Greta Thunberg done? Well, she's a Swedish climate activist. Yeah, she's really switching. So who disagrees with Biden concerning pretty much everything, including fracking.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, again, just mowing all political differences aside, I guess. Mark Ruffalo, who played the Hulk, quoted the clip and said, "Amazing, lol." LeBron James said, "Biden/Harris, endgame," and then a load of emojis. Rachel Brosnahan, I don't know how you say that name, but I assume it's something like that, said, "Would watch the heck out of this movie. May have gotten a tad emotional at the end there."
Wow, brilliant, love it.
Oh my god. By the way, the Rex Chapman, a guy who steals all these tweets, said it was the main person who made this viral. He said, "This is the Twitter content I'm here for. My America." Wow. Another tweet from somebody, Happy Sam Clef, don't know who they are, but they said, "Movie title should be called The Mail-In Vote. The Dream Team Wins." Patty Stranger also said, "Oh my god, this is beautiful. I'm so emotional. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, our heroes." Wow. Kathy Griffin, "God help me, Rex." Rex Chapman was the person who posted it. "I actually cried, got emotional. What's happening to me?" Jameel Hill, "I don't know who did this, but take a bow." Oh my god.
I mean, the editing is impressive.
Yeah. Trump for Prison 2020. At first, I was laughing at how silly this is. That is the correct response, Trump for Prison 2020. And then these guys showed up and I started crying. I hope I can hold on to my sanity for a little longer. And who are the people that showed up? John Lewis, John McCain, Sean Connery, and RBG. Oh my god. That's Sean Connery. That's made her cry. I mean, just incredible. I mean, I would watch that and think this is the most embarrassing shit I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, apparently, as you can tell, liberals loved it. And that is something that we'll get into in a bit as to why. But final thing, Michael, before we go on, just for a last bit of evidence, I'm going to send you this cartoon.
Yeah, it's the lawyers going at it together, because lawyers are the real heroes, I think, if there's one thing we can all agree on.
Yeah, we'll get back to that image later, but of course this was just so hilarious because Michael Avenatti ended up in prison and Robert Mueller ended up in a care home for dementia. Apparently he just missed a load of Trump corruption stuff, which would have made his report so much more impactful, and then it was revealed just before the election and nobody cared. Great job for both of them. Also, lastly, Michael, I just want to show you this article. Is this the secret to selling Joe Biden? This is from a few months ago in The Atlantic. Young people aren't particularly excited about Joe Biden. One strategy to change their mind: convince them they're voting for a big progressive crew. And as you can see right now in the article, that the people running this came up with the Democratic Avengers. as a way to inspire young people to come out to vote for Joe Biden. Basically, they were thinking along the lines of Katniss Everdeen. And apparently, what really captured millennials, or one of the reasons why they were convinced to vote for Biden, is because, it wasn't just Biden. It was Bernie Sanders, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren, Beto O'Rourke. So yeah, that's another bit of evidence. But yeah, that's it basically. That's all of the evidence that I think we need. I think we've pretty comprehensively shown that there is a liberal disposition to view things.
Yeah, like a comic book movie.
Yeah.
As the title says.
Yes, as the title says. And, well, the question is why? Why is it that Michael Avenatti and Robert Mueller are dressed up as superheroes? Why is it that we have Pete Buttigieg as Spider-Man and Bernie Sanders as Doctor Strange? Why is it that we have Yamiche Alcindor just this last weekend that Joe Biden and his transition team were like the Avengers coming in to save the day when it came to America's foreign policy? Why is that? Well, I think we've got some reasons, Michael. We've got some theories. So the first theory is, simply put, I think the concept of superheroes fits in with liberals' view of the world. If you think about it, a lot of what I think liberals, what they get out of politics, really, that's the best way to phrase it. What they get out of politics is moral superiority. I think that's why a lot of them hated Bernie Sanders in the primaries, because he was a kind of a threat to that. If you consider that Bernie Sanders was bringing policies that would actually help people, and kind of move the conversation away from the fancy words that Obama and Buttigieg, who replicated Obama, like to talk about. And yeah, I think Michelle Obama summed it up pretty well when, remember, she said, "We take the high road." Yes,
they go low, we go high.
Yes, exactly, Michael. Yes, and that's the heroic, noble thing to do. And I think that's why also her husband Barack Obama was beloved. I mean, he sounded like the president from a movie. An ideal man. I'm sure many liberals would say Obama is a hero. I'm sure they'd say that. I don't know why they'd say that, but considering his actions, obviously, but I'm sure they'd somehow say that. That's what their politics is, and that's why they loved hating Trump. I mean, they hated him, but they loved hating him. He was the ultimate evil, the exact opposite to Obama, or how a president should act. In a movie, you have, I think, in their opinion, a battle of good versus evil, and Trump is the ultimate evil. So, anybody who opposes Trump must be good. And that, I think, allows them to welcome John Kasich to their side, or want George W. Bush to come onto their side as well. Actually, that's something we didn't mention, and you'll see it on screen now. There was a Colbert clip called Election Endgame that he had on his channel about a month prior to the election, a month prior to that clip, and it had some different characters in different places. And at the end, John Kasich comes out of the video and says, "I am John Kasich." Which is hilarious. John Kasich, a real hero for sure. Trump won it by 8% in 2016, and he won it by 8% once again in 2020. So congrats to Kasich. Really did a great job there.
Liberals, they don't care that much about actually having the right. If you ask liberals a lot of time, what are your basic common sense policies? Some of them I think might have an answer, but a lot of, I guess, liberal culture, the response would be, well, decency, it kind of reminds me of, actually, this is the best analogy I can make for it. You ever seen it in the IT crowd when Jen is asked, what does IT stand for? And she doesn't know the answer. And obviously, it stands for information technology. She doesn't know the answer. And the way she gets around it, she keeps trying to be like, IT stands for freedom and truth and getting the job done. And the one's like, yeah, I understand, but what I'm asking is, what do the letters stand for? That's literally what, I feel like liberals are like. It's like, what are your policies? And it's like, our policies are bringing freedom to Americans, and it's like, oh yeah, I understand, but what are your actual policies? And I think that's definitely what, that's their mentality, basically. You try and nail them down on policies, and their response will be, our policies are, be good, we are the goodest.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because a lot of the time in these superhero films, the actual morality itself is often very superficial and caused by the way that the film is kind of put together and the narrative that the film gets across through its framing, rather than necessarily through one character being obviously presented as good.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, expanding on from that, I mean, this is what's going to be my next point. They have a belief in fairy tales, to put it a bit harshly, and that's the thing. you mentioned, of course, superhero movies, but before superhero movies, this has been a phenomenon in the 2010s. There was something in the 2000s that I think replicated superhero movies, which was Harry Potter. And I think of Harry Potter, and I think, that is the ultimate version of good versus evil.
Yeah.
You have somebody who's obviously very good, very noble, and then you have Voldemort, who's evil. And why is Voldemort evil? He's just evil. He's just a bad guy. And it's childish stuff, really. I mean, it's a book for kids, and also superheroes, they're meant for kids as well, really. And I think if Trump came like 10 years earlier, then he would have been Voldemort.
A lot of fairy tales, they're not about the, sympathetic villains, are they? And it's weird. I mean, see, Lord of the Rings and Star Wars have been generally spared from the kind of incorporation into liberals' political paradigms, but they also have a similar thing going on of the villains. They don't have complicated motivations. It's not like, why does Sauron want to rule the world? And I think that's basically it, That's the fairy tale mentality of, heroes and villains don't really have motivations. They're just kind of essentially good or essentially bad. And that is definitely how liberals view things. They don't really view, and they don't want to view Republicans, or I guess they wouldn't necessarily say Republicans because they could believe some Republicans could be good, but they don't want to view the people who are against them as having necessarily motivation. They just say, oh, they're against, good. And so...
No, and it's quite simple. I mean, I think this has changed quite recently because of the Black Lives Matter protest, and that's, a good thing once more. But I think before that there was this fundamental belief, and it's still the case in Britain today, that liberals in both countries believe that their country was good, and, always, yes, we've had some bad issues, but there's a fundamental goodness in this country. We're morally correct, and that is just, again, fantasy. That is not the case. Nothing in our history makes that so. And it is all about the aesthetic. Like Obama, he's done some pretty bad stuff with drone strikes, kids in cages. I mean, Kamala Harris, she was no hero to those kids in San Francisco that she locked up. Yeah, not really interested in substance, basically, would you say?
Yeah, actually, it kind of reminds me of in the 11th season of Doctor Who, which I didn't watch, but there was a plot about the Doctor, of course, played by Jodie Whittaker. She goes to an Amazon warehouse spoof planet, basically, and it turns out one of the workers who's being mistreated is programming the robots to kill people as like a terrorist attack, basically to bring attention to getting more workers' rights. And at the end of the episode, the Doctor blows up all of the terrorist stuff that's being sent out, killing the relatively young person who is working in the things, who was basically just fighting for their rights. And the episode does no effort to morally complicate the actions. It's basically just like, there we go. She killed the bad guy at the end, even though what the bad guy was fighting for was literally workers' rights. And I think it's particularly funny that this was made when the Doctor has become like a woman, because there's the identity politics aspect of it. Like, oh, she's like good now. She's, one of the good people, and it's wonderful. But and I agree with you that there is that idea of just, well, the character is good, so the things they do are good. And that's kind of how it is with, the UK and America, where it's like the countries are good. America is a good country, so the things America does are good. And there's definitely an idea of grading on a curve, and it works within countries too. So obviously, for example, Obama is good, so the things Obama did were good. When Obama was being a war hawk, that was to spread liberty and stuff. When Trump wasn't really being a war hawk, but whenever Trump did anything bad, that was because he was being bad. Like, that's kind of the logic that everything goes back to that.
But I think Obama, they couch it as Obama, that was necessary. He had to do it.
Too,
Like, he had to do it. Same thing as your Doctor Who thing. Like, when Jodie Whittaker killed that person, they had to do it. They had to do it. It's just no complicated stuff, really. There's good and evil, and that's it. And there's one of the reasons why is they do like comic book movies as well, which is we've got to talk about the superheroes in comic books. They're Übermenches. Would you say, Michael? Übermenches. That is, of course, a term to describe the perfect man or perfect woman, who has all these incredible abilities. And I think if you look at how liberals kind of fawn over someone like Elizabeth Warren, it's not exactly the same, but it is a bit too similar, I would say. This woman, Elizabeth Warren, was going to walk into government. She was going to solve all the problems. A very top-down kind of approach, a belief in technocrats and knowledge and smart people fixing problems, just inherently trusting all these people. Like, you inherently trust a superhero, wouldn't you? Just to, I guess, save the day, and they'll let them do it. They know what they know how to save the day, instead of actually considering that maybe people, a large group of people, a collective, would be better than handing everything over to one person, because then if that person doesn't turn out to be good, well, that's a problem. But so you have to find the really good person who knows everything, and that is when the comparisons again come in. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think also it's interesting in superhero films, because of course in superhero films the amount of power you're dealing with is destructive and potentially world-ending, and of course that means one of the things you always get in superhero films is the balance of power always has to ultimately fall on the side of good. I mean, if you look at the Avengers Endgame, the whole thing is that, Thanos was able to do the snap. But the point is, eventually, when the Avengers all came together, the balance of ultimate power was always on the side of good. And I think if you take the idea of ultimate power and instead replace it with the idea of executive power, that's kind of the liberal belief. So in the same way that people who watch comic book films go there to accept the fact that the balance of superhero power will always be on the side of the good, the liberals believe that the balance of executive power and political power will always be on the side of good as well. And you see that with the idea of the Übermensch, the idea that essentially there will be these people who pop up who are fit to wield executive power and supreme power, I guess. And I think the other thing there is that eventually those people almost like, you like to make this analogy all the time, the Game of Thrones prince that was promised, like the Messiah figure, they will always arrive eventually, the great president who will bring balance to the force almost. That's kind of all of those is weird. You really can't talk about the liberal view of politics without making all of these allusions to these fantasy films like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and all that stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You said fantasy. It is all fantasy. It is all bullshit. Like, there's a separation from reality inherent in all of this. The fact that Übermensches, do not exist. Somebody may say, what about Obama or Elizabeth Warren? I mean, so many holes in their policies, in them as people. Elizabeth Warren pretends to be Native American for 30 years. So I think we should now talk about a TV series which has kind of been a nice contrast, I would say, to this belief in superheroes are morally good, and they never screw up, and that we should put all our faith in them, which is The Boys, Michael.
It's one of, there have been lots of kind of films and shows that have attempted to deconstruct superhero films in a variety of ways, and some of them have been better than others. But this seems to be, from what I saw, an example of one of the ones that does do it better than some other attempts.
And that's the thing. This kind of TV series, The Boys, it wouldn't exist without there being so many superhero movies about, without this love for superhero movies. You see the character in there, Homelander. He's a great character. He is the embodiment of, America. Well, that's what he tries to portray himself as. But of course, you put so much stock in this one person, they turn into a psychopath. And that's undoubtedly, I think, the case with presidents. Somebody like, for example, Obama or Bush or Reagan. Oh, Bill Clinton, just all of them absolute psychopaths, no doubt about it, because they have this much power. They have, they believe that they're so great, so they do things which, they're probably a bit evil, would you say? Like Homelander in The Boys, and I do like it. You won't have seen in season 2. There's a character introduced which is a literal Nazi, and she's a superhero, doing a good job of portraying how. Yeah, she's called Stormfront, by the way. So that's the character. So quite obvious. But kind of doing a good job, I'd say, of being a TV show which is a necessary pushback. And I think, if we look at that video that we watched before, who was Iron Man, Michael?
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, and people have compared Elon Musk to Iron Man. And as we have said, Elon Musk is a really bad person. And if that's the closest thing to Iron Man, well, what does that tell you about if Iron Man really existed in real life? Well, he'd probably be a bit of a dick, and that's the reality. And this comes back to politics, because I would hope that if you watch that series, you would get it that maybe we shouldn't fall in love with the idea of superheroes. The concept of superheroes, that's a bad thing, and therefore looking at politicians like superheroes, that is also a bad thing. I would hope that would be the chain reaction, as it were.
I think the reality is that there's never going to be a media-based solution to this liberal menace, because ultimately, I guess, like a villain in a superhero film, they're just going to keep coming back episode after episode, with a new devious scheme each time. That's how I imagine them. Like, I hate to say it, but I don't think you can deconstruct liberalism to an effect. We can do it here, but it's just never going to work, is the problem. in reality.
Okay, well, we'll do our best. I just want to end with a interview answer by Alan Moore, who, of course, wrote Watchmen, a precursor to The Boys. Watchmen,
Yes.
of course, contains characters like Dr. Manhattan, Rorschach, just evil superheroes. Well, basically, he was trying to, show what can happen with superheroes if, they actually behave like they would in real life and they're basically used by the state. So yeah, Alan Moore knows what he's doing. And this is the interview answer that he gave, which I'm going to read to you now. The question was, what was the impact of popular hero comic books in our culture? Why are people fascinated by alternative realities? So he said, I think the impact of superheroes on popular culture is both embarrassing and not a little worrying. While these characters were originally perfectly suited to stimulating the imaginations of their 12 or 13-year-old audience, today's franchised Übermenschen, aimed at supposedly adult audience, seem to be serving some kind of different function and fulfilling different needs. Primarily, mass-market superhero movies seem to be abetting an audience who do not wish to relinquish their grip on A, their relatively reassuring childhoods. I'd say that's definitely the case, yes. Or B, the relatively reassuring 20th century. The continuing popularity of these movies to me suggests some kind of deliberate self-imposed state of emotional arrest, combined with a numbing condition of cultural stasis that can be witnessed in comics, movies, popular music, and indeed right across the cultural spectrum. The superheroes themselves, largely written and drawn by creators who have never stood up for their own rights against the companies that employ them, much less the rights of a Jack Kirby or a Jerry Siegel or Joe Shuster, would seem to be largely employed as cowardice compensators, perhaps a bit like the handgun on the nightstand. I would also remark that, save for a smattering of non-white characters and non-white creators, these books and these iconic characters are still very much white supremacist dreams of the master race. In fact, I think that a good argument can be made from D.W. Griffin's Birth of a Nation as the first American superhero movie, and the point of origin for all those capes and masks. Yeah, I do agree with that. I think the thing is that why conservatives struggle to get into superheroes, even though they would love something like Superman, is because they're for kids, and they don't like that. It's like, they're for kids. I'm a man. I don't read that childish stuff. But yeah, that's the thing. We have seen throughout American cultural history, from the Birth of the Nation to think about Superman, what he looks like. Yeah, this kind of Übermensch. So yeah, what do you think about
Didn't
that,
even need
Michael?
to do the rest of the episode because Alan Moore just covered it. I think it is a good point, and I do agree that it is about it is about wanting the world to be simple, and I think it's interesting because I think the problem is that this is an example of where it's a very holistic problem. It's not as simple as a lot of the time when we talk about political issues. There's kind of a sense of a simple solution. I mean, not always, but I feel like a lot of time we talk about things, it's kind of like you can get the impression of just, people kind of just need to readjust one aspect of their mindset. In this case, I feel like it is kind of, as Alan Moore was saying, it's such a fundamental thing, and it goes back to the origins of a lot of our society, the origin of kind of political myths and stuff like that. Whether that's Birth of a Nation or the Founding Fathers or the Magna Carta or whatever else, people do like to have these ideas, and a lot of people just aren't going to criticize them. It's also an issue of being apolitical as well. Like, obviously, a lot of liberals might be kind of liberal in the sense of simply that they don't care. And of course, if they don't care, well, one of the things they're going to naturally do is gravitate towards, the status quo is fine, the status quo is great. And, I mean, let's be honest, the just want a grill guy is also watching probably a lot of superhero films as well. So that is, I imagine that's where the appeal comes from. Like, say, the idea of just wanting to be comfortable with things how they are, wanting to relax and believe everything's okay, and wanting to believe in some kind of fundamental goodness that's bringing the world into alignment that can allow you to just feel comfortable. And I think for a lot of people, it's very disturbing to imagine that maybe the systems that they actively hold up and benefit from might be the real villains. The idea that maybe systems are the villains.
Absolutely.
How about that?
Yeah, maybe systems are the villains, absolutely. And yeah, I think that's the thing with Trump, just to end it, I guess, why all these superhero things have come out in the age of Trump and these comparisons. It's like we said before, Trump is the ultimate bad guy. Once he's done, the goodness of America can shine through once again, and we can keep on believing these myths about this country and we can go back to brunch, as it were, talking about, hey, what a wonderful society this is. And it's going to be similar in the UK once Boris Johnson leaves. There's going to be so many Liberal commentators going on about how our country is once again good. It's once again right and righteous, as it were.
Do it! Just do it! Yes, you can!